Okay, so now we're doing the 1.1 part video 2. Our break of the notes and sort of the categories where they are. So this is going to be order of operations. So I'm just going to talk to you. Again, order of operations should be something you already know how to do. I'm just going to review it with you because again, it's an important skill. It's something you should know, but it's also something that's very important. All right, so I want to make sure that you've got it down. Again, it's sort of the basics. We get you started here in college algebra. All right, order of operations. You always start with the multiplication first. You always start with not multiplication. You always start with the grouping symbols first. All right, so you look at and grouping symbols could be parentheses. They could be underneath a square root, above a fraction, below a fraction, inside an absolute value. Anything where it's grouped numbers together. All right, so we've got groups. And so once you do that, you follow the order of operations within your groups. All right, perform the calculations. You always do exponents first. Then you do multiplication. You always do multiplication reading left to right. And then you do addition and subtraction. Always do addition and subtraction reading left to right. And so we're just going to practice a few. Again, hopefully order of operations is something that you're very familiar with. All right, so start with a simple example. So negative 3 times 5 minus 7 squared plus 2 cubed. I'm going to be strict about my order of operations. Now I want to show you using the exact. There are some steps you could go and work a little differently, but I'm going to do it exactly using the order of operations definition. So the first thing is what we do have a grouping symbol, so we start there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 5 and subtract my 7. Everything else I'm going to leave the same. So inside my group, 5 minus 7 is going to give me a negative 2. I still have the square outside, and I didn't take care of 2 cubed, although you probably could. It wouldn't hurt anything to do that. But I'm going to follow order of operations. All right, so the next thing I do in operations is the multiply, which means take care of exponents. So going left to right, so I'm going to take care of this exponent here, and then I'm going to take care of this exponent there. So the negative 3 still stays negative 3 times. I take the negative, and be careful. I left the parentheses so that if you're typing this out on the calculator, you do this. It's negative 2 squared in parentheses. If you don't put parentheses around it and you just type negative 2 and then square, what it'll do, it'll square the 2 and then multiply by the negative 1 and give you negative 4, which is the wrong answer. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. Alright, then still following my order of operation, the next multiplication or exponent I take care of is 2 cubed. 2 cubed is 8. Alright, so now I've taken care of my groups, I've taken care of exponents, now I take care of any multiplication and division. Well, I've got one set of multiplication. Negative 3 times 4, which comes out negative 12, and then I still have the plus 8. And then the last thing I do is take care of that, negative 12 plus 8. And so negative 12 plus 8 is negative 4, and negative 4 is my answer. Alright, so that simplifies using order of operations, negative 4. Alright, second example. Alright, 8 minus 3 over 4 minus 2 plus 2. Plus 2 minus 3, absolute value of 3 minus 5. Okay, now it's a little trickier because it doesn't look like it's a grouping symbol, but it is. Because if I were typing this out on the calculator, I'd have to perform the subtractions first. And so even though it doesn't show up, this is really an understood grouping symbol, and this is really an understood grouping symbol. So if I'm following order of operations, I have to take care of the 8 minus 3, the 4 minus 2, and then this is an absolute value is considered a grouping symbol, and so I have to take care of it. So that's the first thing. I'm going to take care of each of these subtractions inside the grouping symbol, right? Again, this fraction is considered, the top part of the fraction is considered a group. I have to do that. And the bottom side is considered a group after that. I have to do the 8 minus 3 and the 4 minus 2 before I can take care of the division, the fraction part. Alright, so that's what I'm going to do first. So I'm going to take care of each one of those 3 groups in my next one. So 8 minus 3 would give me 5. 4 minus 2 would give me 2. I didn't do anything to the plus 2. It stayed. Minus absolute value. I haven't taken care of the absolute value. I'm just taking care of the group inside. So 3 minus 5 is going to give me absolute value of negative 2. Alright, next thing I do is take care of if I've got a square root or a absolute value, and I do. So this is the symbol I'm going to take care of. This grouping symbol is my absolute value, so it's the absolute value of negative 2. The rest of it I'm going to leave, so I'm going to leave my 5 halves, my plus 2, That minus is outside of the absolute, so that minus comes along, and I'm just taking care of the absolute value of 2. Our absolute value is, you make it the positive number, right? It's the distance from the origin, which is negative 2 is 2 units from the origin. Right, so 2. That simplifies to 2. Alright, now I go ahead and add and subtract. Now this is where, again, we typically tell you to say read left to right, but this one's actually easier if I do it the other way around, right to left with addition and subtraction, because what happens when I take this 2 and subtract away this 2? Well, that 2 minus this 2 will zero out, and it will just leave me with my 5 halves, which is my final answer. Or if you prefer the decimal, 2.5. Let's do one more example of order of operations, just to get you practice with a square root. Alright, so third example. Alright, so 13 minus the square root of 9 plus 16 divided by the whole thing, divided by the absolute value of 5 minus 7 squared. Right, so again, there's actually 3 sets of groups here. There's you always start the innermost group and work yourself out. So the innermost group are the 9 plus the 16 inside the square, and the 5 minus the 7 inside the absolute value. There actually is another group, this group here above the fraction, and this group here below the fraction. And so we'll take care of those when we get to them. First thing I'm going to do, though, is take care of the 9 plus 16 in the square root and the 5 minus 7 in the absolute value. So my next step, 13, I didn't do anything with. I still have the minus. I'm just taking 9 and adding it to 16, which is 25. And then in the denominator, I still have the absolute value and the square. I haven't done anything with that. All I'm doing is taking 5 minus 7, which is a negative 2. Alright, now I take care of my special symbols where I can. So my groups that I simplify. So I can simplify the square root of 25, and I can find the absolute value of negative 2. Keep in mind the square is still outside of that. Alright, so 13 minus the square root of 25, which is 5, all over the absolute value of negative 2. So the absolute value of negative 2 is 2, but I still have the square of that, so it's 2 squared. Alright, now my next step is, again, it's not drawn this way, but it's understood when I'm above a fraction, this is a grouping symbol. And same thing below the fraction is a grouping symbol. And so I'm going to take care of the 13 minus 5 above the fraction, and I'm going to take care of the 2 squared below the fraction, and I'm going to do that at the same time. So 13 minus 5 will give me 8 above, and 2 squared gives me 4 below, and now I can take care of the division. 8 divided by 4 leaves me with a final answer of 2. Alright, and so that was practicing order of operations. So making sure you know order of operations. And so I'm going to stop the video there. I'll pick up the next set of notes, scientific notation, on the next video.